Okay, so we're just going to continue on with the very next bit. And the last thing from the last video was Brom congratulating Jode on his marriage. Jode did not seem happy with the compliment. He hunched his shoulders and stared down at the street. Whether congratulations are in order is debatable right now. Helen isn't very happy. Why? What does she want? Asked Brom. The usual, said Jode with a resigned shrug. A good home, happy children, food on the table, and pleasant company. The problem is that she comes from a wealthy family. Her father has invested heavily in my business. If I keep suffering these losses, there won't be enough money for her to live the way she's used to. Jode continued. But please, my troubles are not your troubles. A host should never bother his guests with his own concerns. While you're in my house, I will let nothing more than an overfull stomach disturb you. Thank you, said Brom. We appreciate the hospitality. Our travels have long been without comforts of any kind. Do you happen to know where we could find an inexpensive shop? All this writing has worn out our clothes. Of course. That's my job, said Jode, lightening up. He talked eagerly about prices and stores until his house was in sight. Then he asked, Would you mind if we went somewhere else to eat? It might be awkward if you came in right now. Whatever makes you feel comfortable, said Brom. Jode looked relieved. Thanks. Let's leave your horses in my stable. They did as he suggested, then followed him to a large tavern. Unlike the Green Chestnut, this one was loud, clean, and full of boisterous people. When the main course arrived, a stuffed suckling pig, Eragon dug eagerly into the meat, but he especially savored the potatoes, carrots, turnips, and sweet apples that accompanied it. It had been a long time since he had eaten much more than wild game. They lingered over the meal for hours as Brom and Jode swapped stories. Eragon did not mind. He was warm, a lively tune jingled in the background, and there was more than enough food. The spirited tavern babble fell pleasantly on his ears. When they finally exited the tavern, the sun was nearing the horizon. You two go ahead. I have to check on something, Eragon said. He wanted to see Saphira and make sure that she was safely hidden. Brom agreed absently. Be careful, and don't take too long. Wait, said Jode. Are you going outside Tyrim? Eragon hesitated, then reluctantly nodded. Well, make sure you're back inside the walls before dark. The gates close then, and the guards won't let you back in until morning. I won't be late, promised Eragon. He turned around and loped down the side street, toward Tyrim's outer wall. Once out of the city, he breathed deeply, enjoying the fresh air. Saphira, he called. Where are you? She guided him off the road to the base of a mossy cliff surrounded by maples. He saw her head poke out of the trees on the top and waved. How am I supposed to get up there? If you find a clearing, I'll come down and get you. No, he said, eyeing the cliff. That won't be necessary. I'll just climb up. It's too dangerous, and you worry too much. Let me have some fun. Eragon pulled off his gloves and started climbing. He relished the physical challenge. There were plenty of handholds, so the ascent was easy. He was soon high above the trees. Halfway up, he stopped on a ledge to catch his breath. Once his strength returned, he stretched up for the next handhold, but his arm was not long enough. Stymied, he searched for another crevice or ridge to grasp. There was none. He tried backing down, but his legs could not reach his last foothold. Saphira watched with unblinking eyes. He gave up and said, I could use some help. This is your own fault. Yes, I know. Are you going to get me down or not? If I weren't around, you would be in a very bad situation. Eragon rolled his eyes. You don't have to tell me. You're right. After all, how can a mere dragon expect to tell a man like yourself what to do? In fact, everyone should stand in awe of your brilliance of finding the only dead end. Why, if you had started a few feet in the other direction, the path to the top would have been clear. She cocked her head at him, eyes bright. All right, I made a mistake. Now can you please come get me out of here? He pleaded. She pulled her head back from the edge of the cliff. After a moment, he called, Saphira! Above him were only swaying trees. Saphira! Come back! He roared. With a loud crash, Saphira barreled off the top of cliff. Lord! Flipping around in midair. She floated down to Eragon like a huge bat and grabbed his shirt with her claws, scratching his back. He let go of the rocks as she yanked him up in the air. After a brief flight, she set him down gently on top of the cliff and tucked her claws out of his shirt. Foolishness, said Saphira gently. Eragon looked away, studying the landscape. The cliff provided a wonderful view of their surroundings, especially the foaming sea, as well as protection against unwelcome eyes. Only birds would see Saphira here. It was an ideal location. Is Brom's friend trustworthy? She asked. I don't know. Eragon proceeded to recount the day's events. There are forces circling us that we aren't aware of. Sometimes I wonder if we are ever going to understand the true motives of the people around us. They all seem to have secrets. It is the way of the world. Ignore all the schemes and trust in the nature of each person. Brom is good. He means us no harm, and we don't have to fear his plans. I hope so, he said, looking down at his hands. This finding of the Razak through writing is a strange way of tracking, she remarked. Would there be a way to use magic to see the records without being inside the room? I'm not sure. You would have to combine the word for seeing with distance. Or maybe light and distance? Either way, it seems rather difficult. I'll ask Brom. That would be wise. They lapsed into tranquil silence. You know, we may have to stay here a while. Saphira's answer held a hard edge. And as always, I will be left to wait outside. That's not how I want it. Soon enough we will travel together again. May that day come quickly. Eragon smiled and hugged her. He noticed then how rapidly the light was fading. I have to go now before I'm locked out of Tirm. Hunt tomorrow and I will see you in the evening. She spread her wings. Come, I will take you down. He got onto her scaly back and held on tightly as she launched off the cliff, glided over the trees, then landed on a knoll. Eragon thanked her and ran back to Tirm. He came into sight of the portcullis just as it was beginning to lower. Calling for them to wait, he put on a burst of speed and slipped inside seconds before the gateway slammed closed. You cut that a little close, observed one of the guards. It won't happen again, assured Eragon, bending over to catch his breath. He wound his way through the darkened city to Jode's house. A lantern hung outside like a beacon. A plump butler answered his knock and ushered him inside without a word. Tapestries covered the stone walls. Elaborate rugs dotted the polished wood floor, which glowed with the light from 3 gold candelabra hanging from the ceiling. Smoke drifted through the air and collected above. This way, sir. Your friend is in the study. They passed scores of doorways until the butler opened one to reveal a study. Books covered the room's walls. Unlike those in Jode's office, these came in every shape and size. A fireplace filled with blazing logs warmed the room. Brom and Jode sat before an oval writing desk, talking amiably. Brom raised his pipe and said in a jovial voice, Ah, here you are. We were getting worried about you. How was your walk? I wonder what put him in such a good mood. Why doesn't he just come out and ask how Saphira is? Pleasant, but the guards almost locked me outside the city. And Tirm is big. I had trouble finding this house. Jode chuckled. When you have seen Dros Leona, Gilead, or even Kuasta, you won't be so easily impressed by this small ocean city. I like it here, though. When it's not raining, Tirm is really quite beautiful. Eragon turned to Brom. Do you have any idea how long we'll be here? Brom spread his palms upward. That's hard to tell. It depends on whether we can get to the records and how long it will take us to find what we need. We'll all have to help. It'll be a huge job. I'll talk with Bran tomorrow and see if he'll let us examine the records. I don't think I'll be able to help, Eragon said, shifting uneasily. Why not? Asked Brom. There'll be plenty of work for you. Eragon lowered his head. I can't read. Brom straightened with disbelief. You mean Garon never taught you? He knew how to read? Asked Eragon, puzzled. Jode watched them with interest. Of course he did, snorted Brom. The proud fool. What was he thinking? I should have realized that he wouldn't have taught you. He probably considered it an unnecessary luxury. Brom scowled and pulled at his beard angrily. This sets my plans back, but not irreparably. I'll just have to teach you how to read. It won't take long if you put your mind to it. Eragon winced. Brom's lessons were usually intense and brutally direct. How much more can I learn at one time? I suppose it's necessary, he said ruefully. You'll enjoy it. There's so much you can learn from books and scrolls, said Jode. He gestured at the walls. These books are my friends, my companions. They make me laugh and cry and find meaning in life. It sounds intriguing, admitted Eragon. Always the scholar, aren't you? Asked Brom. Jode shrugged. Not anymore. I'm afraid I've degenerated into a bibliophile. A what? Asked Eragon. One who loves books, explained Jode, and resumed conversing with Brom. Bored, Eragon scanned the shelves. An elegant book set with gold studs caught his attention. He pulled it off the shelf and stared at it curiously. It was bound in black leather, carved with mysterious runes. Eragon ran his fingers over the cover and savored its cool smoothness. The letters inside were printed with a reddish glossy ink. He let the pages slip past his fingers. A column of script, set off from the regular lettering, caught his eye. The words were long and flowing, full of graceful lines and sharp points. Eragon took the book to Brom. What is this? He asked, pointing to the strange writing. Brom looked at the page closely and raised his eyebrows in surprise. Jode, you've expanded your collection. Where did you get this? I haven't seen one in ages. Jode strained his neck to see the book. Ah, yes, the Domia Abra Weirda. A man came through here a few years ago and tried to sell it to a trader down by the wharves. Fortunately, I happened to be there and was able to save the book, along with his neck. He didn't have a clue what it was. It's odd, Eragon, that you should pick up this book. The Dominance of Fate, said Brom. Of all the items in this house, it's probably worth the most. It details a complete history of Allegasia. starting long before the elves landed here and ending a few decades ago. The book is very rare and is of the best of its kind. When it was written, the Empire decried it as blasphemy and burned the author, Heslint the monk. I didn't think any copies still existed. The lettering you asked about is from the ancient language. What does it say? Asked Eragon. It took Brom a moment to read the writing. It's part of an elven poem that tells of the years they fought the dragons. This excerpt describes one of their kings, Caranthor, as he rides into battle. The elves love this poem and tell it regularly, though you need 3 days to do it properly so that they won't repeat the mistakes of the past. At times they sing it so beautifully it seems the very rocks will cry. Eragon returned to his chair, holding the book gently. It's amazing that a man who is dead can talk to people through these pages. As long as this book survives, his ideas live. I wonder if it contains any information about the Razak. He browsed through the book while Brom and Jode spoke. Hours passed and Eragon began to drowse. Out of pity for his exhaustion, Jode bid them good night. The butler will show you to your rooms. On the way upstairs, the servant said, If you need assistance, use the bell pull next to the bed. He stopped before a cluster of 3 doors, bowed, then backed away. As Brom entered the room on the right, Eragon asked, Can I talk to you? You just did, but come in anyway. Eragon closed the door behind himself. Saphira and I had an idea. Is there... Brom stopped him with a raised hand and pulled the curtains shut over the windows. When you talk of such things, you would do well to make sure that no unwelcome ears are present. Sorry, said Eragon, berating himself for the slip. Anyway, is it possible to conjure up an image of something that you can't see? Brom sat on the edge of his bed. What you are talking about is called scrying. It is quite possible and extremely helpful in some situations, but it has a major drawback. You can only observe people, places, and things that you've already seen. If you were to scry the Razak, you'd see them all right, but not their surroundings. There are other problems as well. Let's say that you wanted to view a page in a book, one that you'd already seen. You could only see the page if the book were open to it. If the book were closed when you tried this, the page would appear completely black. Why can't you view objects that you haven't seen? Asked Eragon. Even with those limitations, he realized, scrying could be very useful. I wonder if I could view something leagues away and use magic to affect what was happening there. Because, said Brom patiently, to scry you have to know what you're looking at and where to direct your power. Even if a stranger was described to you, it would still be nigh impossible to view him, not to mention the ground and whatever else might be around him. You have to know what you're scrying before you can scry it. Does that answer your question? Eragon thought for a moment. But how is it done? Do you conjure up the image in thin air? Not usually, said Brom, shaking his white head. That takes more energy than projecting it onto a reflective surface like a pool of water or a mirror. Some writers used to travel everywhere they could, trying to see as much as possible. Then whenever war or some other calamity occurred, they would be able to view events throughout Alagasia. May I try it? Asked Eragon. Brom looked at him carefully. No, not now. You're tired, and scrying takes a lot of strength. I will tell you the words, but you must promise not to attempt it tonight. And I would rather you wait until we leave Tirm. I have much more to teach you. Eragon smiled. I promise. Very well. Brom bent over and very quietly whispered Dramar Kopa into Eragon's ear. Eragon took a moment to memorize the words. Maybe after we've left Tirm, I can scry Roran. I would like to know how he's doing. I'm afraid that the Razak might go after him. I don't mean to frighten you, but that's a distinct possibility, said Brom. Although Roran was gone, most of the time the Razak were in Carvahall, I'm sure that they asked questions about him. Who knows, they may have even met him while they were in Theransford. Either way, I doubt their curiosity is sated. You're on the loose after all, and the king is probably threatening them with terrible punishment if you aren't found. If they get frustrated enough, they'll go back and interrogate Roran. It's only a matter of time. If that's true, then the only way to keep Roran safe is to let the Razak know where I am, so that they'll come after me instead of him. No, that won't work either. You're not thinking, admonished Brom. If you can't understand your enemies, then how can you expect to anticipate them? Even if you exposed your location, the Razak would still chase Roran. Do you know why? Eragon straightened and tried to consider every possibility. Well, if I stay in hiding long enough, they might get frustrated and capture Roran to force me to reveal myself. If that didn't work, they'd kill him just to hurt me. Also, if I become a public enemy of the Empire, they might use him as bait to catch me. And if I met with Roran and they found out about it, they would torture him to find out where I was. Very good. You figured that out quite nicely, said Brom. But what's the solution? I can't let him be killed. Brom clasped his hands loosely. The solution is quite obvious. Roran is going to have to learn how to defend himself. That may sound hard-hearted, but as you pointed out, you cannot risk meeting with him. You may not remember this. You were half delirious at the time. But when we left Carvajal, I told you that I had left a warning letter for Roran, so he won't be totally unprepared for danger. If he has any sense at all, when the Razaks show up in Carvajal again, he'll take my advice and flee." "I don't like this," said Eragon unhappily. "Ah, but you forget something." "What?" he demanded. "There's some good in all this. The king cannot afford to have a rider roaming around that he does not control. Galbatorix is the only known rider alive besides yourself, but he would like another one under his command. Before he tries to kill you or Roran, he will offer you the chance to serve him. Unfortunately, if he ever gets close enough to make that proposition, it will be far too late for you to refuse and still live." "You call that some good?" "It's all that's protecting Roran. As long as the king doesn't know which side you've chosen, he won't risk alienating you by harming your cousin. Keep that firmly in mind. The Razak killed Garrow, but I think it was an ill-considered decision on their part. From what I know of Galbatorix, he would not have approved it unless he gained something from it." "And how will I be able to deny the king's wishes when he is threatening me with death?" asked Eragon sharply. Brom sighed. He went to his nightstand and dipped his fingers in a basin of rosewater. "Galbatorix wants your willing cooperation. Without that, you're worse than useless to him. So the question becomes, if you are ever faced with this choice, are you willing to die for what you believe in? For that is the only way you will deny him." The question hung in the air. Brom finally said, "It's a difficult question, and not one you can answer until you're faced with it. Keep in mind that many people have died for their beliefs. It's actually quite common. The real courage is in living and suffering for what you believe." And that is the end of this chapter. We have finally done it. And we'll be back for the next one very soon.